All my life growing up in Central Florida, I had been told to stay away from Ocoee, but did not know why.
In a Ku Klux Klan mentality white community, the Negro was evil.
There's kind of an unofficial orientation that people of color get when they come to the Central Florida area.
A massacre is indiscriminate killing of anything and everything. And they knew exactly who they were killing in 1920.
Ocoee today is a physical illusion of a invisible injustice, and until the reality of that night in 1920 or that event comes to light, there will always be a cloud of darkness over the city of Ocoee.
Dear Mrs. Houston, we are speaking of lynches and other ill happenings to colored people in the South, but at last, one of the most wickedest happenings of a lifetime happened here on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning of the election.
My grandfather used to take me every place. First 6 years of my life, my name was not Jim. It was Colonel Salisbury's grandson. That's what they call me. He was the colonel's grandson. I guess I started when I was about 4. By the time I got to be 31 or 32 when he died, I had just about picked his brain at that point pretty well. I never said a word to anybody about it because the way it was set up, if you want to talk about it and ask about it, you could do it. But you couldn't repeat what you heard, and you couldn't give it to other information to other people. That was the way it was. That was the way the elders wanted it that way.
I was with my grandmother this particular afternoon, sitting on a porch, and just began to ask her various questions about her life, which I didn't know. And I guess this particular day she felt willing to be exposed and to open up and to tell me things that maybe she had not really shared in great detail, other than maybe with my mother, about her background. And she began to tell me about her father. And she said his name was July Perry, and she told me to go in the house and look at a picture of him, and I did. When I came back, she told me that something pretty bad happened in the city that she grew up in, which was called Ocoee.
Well, from the morning they went to vote, apparently they met opposition at the polls. It was said that July Perry journeyed to downtown Orlando. Him or both Mose Norman went to talk to Judge Cheney, who was seeking the U.S. Senate seat at that time.
I think it was July. Some other people say it was Moses. He got denied. He went in to see Mr. Cheney, or Judge Cheney, and then he came back.
And for some crazy reason, Cheney says, go back and take names of those individuals who are not allowing you to vote.
The white population evidently was intimidated by the number and the growing power of people like Mose Norman and July Perry, because if you had a lettuce farm or a grove or something, you couldn't get any labor unless you went through Mose or July. And so they were two of the more powerful people in town. They drove nice cars, they had property and so on.
He had orange groves that he managed and owned, and he would put them to work pulling the fruit and working in his fields. And that was not very popular with the white township there. They thought he was a little too popular, if you would, for a black man, and had too much prosperity to work with.
From some accounts that blacks had been roving through the community prior to election, and they were causing trouble.
They were trying to register to vote, and on Friday and Saturday nights, the two grocery stores, white folks couldn't get in there because the Negroes were on the porch, or and so when we heard that Judge Cheney was going to have all these people vote, we sent the notary out of town to go fishing, and Mose Norman did try to vote. And so the Negro version is not the same as the white version about whether or not he did vote, but they do agree that he had a shotgun in the back of his car, and that they did pistol whip him or whatever and send him on his way.
So my grandfather was summoned to come down there because of the person down there with a gun. So when he got to the post, there was nobody there, so he left and went back to the mill. Then he was home, and then the posse came up to get him to help him.
Colonel Sam said everybody was deputized. I don't know that that's true. I don't doubt it, because during the time, the sheriff, according to Sam and others, was a member of the Klan as well.
And the way my grandfather explained it to me was they went out there, and there were 10 of them, about 10 of them, and they had a plan set up. They were going to get on all four sides of the house, and then two guys were going to go up, get Perry to come out the front door, tell him that he was under arrest, and take him off.
A group of men from the township did come to their home, she said, that night, and surrounded the home.
Sam said he knocked on the door, and July said, who's there? And he said, it's me, July. He says, yes, sir, boss. Come out here, July, I want to talk to you. And he said, well, just a minute, boss, let me get my hat.
Her father had one rifle, if you would, shotgun, and he gave her one, and said that, Caritha, we're going to have some problems tonight.
So July came out of the house, and Grandpa and Boyd Wilson were on the front porch with July. And he explained to July that he was going to have to arrest him for what happened at the pose earlier that day. And July said to my grandfather, "It's cold, I want to get my coat." My grandfather didn't feel that if he got back in the house, he'd ever get him out again. So he grabbed him around the neck, and that's when Perry's daughter, 19-year-old daughter, Karita, stuck the rifle in my grandfather's stomach. And my grandfather reached down and got knocked out of the way, and it went off. Now, I don't know whether it went off from her pulling the trigger or from him knocking it or what, but it went in his hand and it came out his elbow.
She wasn't in a position to do any shooting herself at that point in time because he was really more so concerned about her mother and the other children.
When Grandpa got shot, then everybody started shooting.
Bullets were flying through the house, and she said so many of you could see the tracers of each bullet passing through. He was inside of his home shooting out of one, I suppose, a window back at these men that were shooting at him.
The shooting took off for about 10 minutes, and then it quit. And when it got through, 6 white guys were injured, 2 white guys were killed. Mr. Perry was seriously wounded. Karita was wounded.
After her father was wounded, he told her that she needed to take her mother and the other children and get them out of the house to safety, and that he would not be coming with them. And she said she recalled asking Papa, "We don't want to leave you," and he said, "You have to."
They all took off out a trap door out the back where the two dead white guys were and headed for the cane fields.
And she said she recalls praying and said, "Lord, you got to help us get out of here." And she said she looked at the back door and there was a cat hole there where the cat could come in and out of the house. And she said upon looking through the cat hole, she looked through a cornfield and saw a path of light beaming from the moon, but it shined a path of light that gave them a route to take to escape out of the house.
At that point, they called for reinforcements. They found July and they took him to Orlando.
She never saw her father again. And even at the time of our talking, when she was telling me the story, she had no idea as to where. She assumed he was dead, but did not know where his body was at that time. But word had gotten to her and her mother that he was drug out of the house and later lynched up the road.
Sheriff let the mob have him, and that's what there was a mob. They took him out and they hung him, and then they shot him. Okay? Moses got in his car and took off. He was seen down.
Did they hang him and shot him, or shoot him and then hang him?
No, they hung him after he was hanging him from the tree. They took target practice on him.
Just somewhere after late that night, around 11 o'clock on election day, you know, it all hell broke loose in Ocoee.
They all piled in their cars, and they got their guns, and they came out here, and they went to the north quarters. And when they went through there, they burned 25 houses. They killed 5 more people.
Kerosene was poured on the houses and set fire, and as blacks tried to flee their homes, they were gunned down. So blacks scattered through whatever way they could, you know, get out of the town that night.
Those people, you know, they had to run for their lives. They probably was on their back, and that's what they went for. It was a war zone for 10 hours. At the end of 10 hours, the war was over. It was not Orange County's finest hour, I'll tell you that. It was not the finest hour.
The people on the south of town are being threatened that they must sell out and leave, or they will be shot and burned as the others have been. I don't know the first step to take. Everywhere near here is crowded out with people, and I haven't been able to sell out as yet. It seemed to have been a prearranged affair to kill and drive the colored people from their homes, as they were more prosperous than the white folks. So they are hoping to get their homes for nothing. However, I am trusting in the Lord for His goodness. I intended to have sent your oranges by Thanksgiving, but I was away from home. I hope you will get these. Signed, Miss J.H. Hamilton.
We, the grand jury, called by your honor to conduct an inquiry into the trouble at Ocoee November 2nd, have carried on a rigid and searching investigation. And the death of July Perry, a Negro, we accept the coroner's verdict. We exonerate Perry's widow and daughter, now in custody in Tampa, Florida, and recommend their release. We have found that the state's attorney, the officers of the law, the members of the Orlando Memorial Post No. 9 American Legion, together with other ex-servicemen and the leading citizens of Ocoee, Winter Garden, Orlando, and nearby towns, have performed their full duty in maintaining law and order. And after the brief outburst of passion over the killing of 2 white men, have maintained the honor of their county and state. %80 of the people in Ocoee don't even know about it. So why would you bring it up? Well, I don't subscribe to that theory. This event is part of our history. It's part of our history. We've waited 80 years. How long is it going to take for it to die out? You see, I don't think it's going to die out.
I'm concerned about what goes on in my house, and Ocoee is my house.
There's 2 groups that have formed to work on this Ocoee history. There's our group, Democracy Forum. We started first about 4 years ago. And right after we've had our first kind of public coming out, about a year into our work, another group within the small town of Ocoee formed called the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force.
We are the West Orange community today.
There's a lesson to be learned in terms of what happens when supposedly good folks do bad stuff.
It's like, you can't just say it's the same for white people and black people. I don't think so. We're in the position of power still, institutionally, privilege-wise. So, gotta recognize that. And it's a long process.
Not that we will ever know everything that has happened, but when we've gathered a substantial amount of information, then we want to talk about how, as a community, we can honor the memory of those who suffered.
The greatest memorial that could be established concerning July Perry and those that lost their lives with other families from Ocoee would be the memorial of truth.
The census records told the story. 495 black people disappeared overnight from the town of Ocoee.
In this era of alienation and American citizens being suspect because of their color or religion or whatnot, that now is a real time to strike the reconciliation chord.
Old Ocoee, new Ocoee, and just talk.
So I want to see Ocoee be a place where, if I tell somebody I'm going to Ocoee, they don't say to me, "Oh, don't you go over there. You be careful while you're over there." I want that totally erased. If nothing else happens, blacks should be made feel free and welcome.
And if I had known, just going with the mentality of my mother and father growing up, escaping from the South, if I'd known the history of Ocoee, I don't think I would have moved here.
We're all, striving to make a living and, function in this world of integration that we all now have grown to kind of accept. But the people in Ocoee, it will never happen again. I don't believe, not in my lifetime, that black people will own as much land as they did.
Someone has to be accountable, and there should be some type of give back.
But I don't think I would have moved here just to deal with all this nonsense, okay? I don't really think so. But now that I'm here, I do have a sense of divine appointment. That fate brought me here, that the power, a higher hand brought me here, that God brought me here. And so there's a task to do, and I'm ready to rise to the occasion.
Unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt as a result of what occurred. People got killed. People lost all the property they ever owned, and they never recovered from it. But criticizing my grandfather for his part in it, he did what he thought was the right thing for his family, or for him, to protect his family. He did what he was asked to do. I don't know whether it was right or whether it was wrong. I know one thing that was wrong was that the people should have been allowed to vote.
Picturing my great-great-grandfather in that scenario and trying to imagine his disposition or his demeanor, if you would, trying to imagine the courage and the strength as well as the fear that had to certainly be battling within his mind and body at that time, and yet was man enough to be willing and knew at that moment he probably would lose his life, but for a good cause, and that was the integrity of freedom.
When shall